Hey, what's up guys? It's Rick with the Digital Divide, and today I'm giving you a full review of the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, I've spent several hours with the console at this point. This is going to be a review of the hardware, not the software. The software will come later, but I did want to talk about it since it's out today, and without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So this is the Nintendo Switch 2. This is the box. It looks really similar to the second revision of the original Switch that also came in a red box, not the OLED, but the second one that had a slightly better battery life. As you can see, the Joy-Cons and the unit are front and center here, so let's go ahead and pop out one of these. Just immediately, I can tell it's bigger. The stick feels like it has more travel. You can see that the colors are a little bit more subdued when compared to the original Switch. The only color splash that you have is underneath the analog sticks, whereas the entire Joy-Con was a little bit more colorful on the original Switch. Now, there is your standard power and volume on the left there. The system does have magnetic connectors on either side of the system, and they are very secure based on my limited use so far. Now, there is USB Type-C charging on both the bottom and top of the unit, as well as stereo speakers, and they sound a lot better. This also has a headphone jack as well. The micro SD card is accessible underneath of the kickstand. Now, this does come with a fairly beefy charger, which is awesome to see these days. A lot of companies don't even include the brick anymore. This is your holder for the Switch 2 Joy-Cons. Now, you'll notice that they don't slide in because these are magnetically attached now, so you just pop them in on the left and right there without needing to slide anything in, and they do feel very, very, very secure. Now, my first impressions are that these feel incredible compared to the first Switch. Speaking of the original Switch, I'm going to show you a comparison between the old Joy-Cons and the new ones. So this is the set of Joy-Cons that I have on the right here. I'll go ahead and pop one of them out to give you a closer comparison between the two. Oh, this is a good time to show you how these detach, actually. There's a little button on either side, and it's just like a physical piece of plastic that pushes the Joy-Con out enough so that you have enough leverage to just pull it out all the way, and it's fairly effortless. Now, this is a size comparison between the old Joy-Con and the new one. You can tell that it is significantly bigger than the old Switch, and they're a lot more comfortable to use. The shoulder buttons are bigger and easily accessible. Now, I did run into pairing issues, though, with these old Joy-Cons. They're supposed to work on the Switch 2, but when I went in, I didn't have any luck doing that. Now, a friend of mine also picked up a Switch 2 on launch night, and he was able to pair his old Joy-Cons without any issues. I don't know if it's an issue with just my Joy-Cons or what's going on here, but the instructions say to turn the Joy-Con on and then to press the left and right shoulder buttons at the same time to pair it. And you can see that I'm doing that here with the right Joy-Con, and it's not being recognized, and the left Joy-Con is also not being recognized. Again, I think this is an issue with my Joy-Cons because other people have had success pairing them, but this is supposed to work. Now, moving on, the system also comes with two of these, one for each Joy-Con, and this is what you'll use to convert the Joy-Con into a mouse so that you can use it as a mouse for certain first-person shooter games or RTS games. You just pop this off and it slides right in. Let's see if we can get this on here. First try. Well, maybe the bottom needs to go in first. Okay, yeah, there we go. And then this allows you to use the Joy-Con as a mouse, which is awesome. I can't wait to play Metroid this way. Now, the kickstand is a massive improvement over the original Switch, although I wouldn't say it's an improvement over the OLED Switch kickstand. You can see that it does go back almost all the way flush, so it feels very rigid and firm. Hopefully, it stays that way long term. And the Switch 2 obviously comes with a docking station. This is new. It does have an internal fan to keep the unit cool, which is super nice to see. We can pop off this back cover here, and I can show you what's underneath. It's pretty straightforward. It's just your standard power and HDMI, although this time around, there is a full-service Ethernet port there, which I cannot wait to use. That was one of my biggest gripes with the original Switch. And there is also a pair of USB Type-A ports on the left of the dock as well, so you can plug in additional accessories. Now, before I get into the full review, I did want to test both of the USB Type-C ports on the Switch to see if they will output video or if you have to use the dock. So I have this external monitor. It's a traveling monitor that I use, and it connects via USB-C. So I'm going to plug it into the top USB-C port on the Switch 2 to see if it does anything. And we're getting nothing. We're not even getting power here. So it looks like it is not outputting video. I'm going to dig into the settings here to see if it's something that can be enabled. So we'll go ahead and dive into the settings here. I'm not seeing anything. I see HDR options, resolution options. I'm going to hold this a little bit closer to the camera so you can take a look here, but there's HDR output options, there's resolution outputs, of which go all the way to 4K, by the way, RGB color spectrum options, 120 hertz output settings, low latency mode, but nothing here that would indicate that you can output video via the USB-C. But maybe it is just the top USB-C port, so I'm also going to try the bottom here. Right off the bat, we're getting power, which is good. Let's see if we get any video. And we're not getting anything. So it looks like you do still need the docking station to output video. As far as I can tell, it's not going to do it through either of the USB-C ports on the back here. Just in case you're curious, this is what the game looks like. There's nothing much to show here. It's just a bunch of wasted plastic. This could literally be half the size. I don't know why they didn't just make this the size of like a Nintendo DS case. But these are the new red cartridges. Again, not much to see here. If we go to the data management, I can tell you that the system has 232 gigs of available storage after all of the system updates. Now, the first thing I did when I booted up my Switch was to see if Mario Kart is actually on the cartridge or not. And it looks like it is, because it's only taking up 149 megabytes on the system itself, and that was just an update that I downloaded. So the full game, as soon as I unboxed this thing, was on the cartridge, which is great to see. So let's talk about hardware. How does the Switch 2 stack up against other current generation consoles? Well, I touched on this in my preview video, but the Switch 2 is using an NVIDIA T239 APU. This features an 8-core ARM CPU paired with an Ampere-based GPU that has 1,536 CUDA cores and significantly larger memory bandwidth than the original Switch. It also features 12 gigs of RAM, 4 gigs of which is dedicated to the operating system and features, and the other 8 gigs is dedicated to games. Now, when we compare this directly to the Xbox Series S, it's shocking how close they are in terms of hardware. Both consoles feature a custom 8-core CPU. Both consoles feature a GPU with roughly 4 teraflops of overall computational power. The Switch 2 actually has more RAM than the Xbox Series S. It has 12 gigabytes of RAM versus the Series S's 10 gigabytes of RAM, although the Series S has a bigger SSD at 512 gigabytes versus the 256 gigabytes of the Switch 2. Both consoles also feature hardware-based ray tracing, but this is where the Switch 2 has a huge advantage. It supports hardware-based AI upscaling versus the Series S's software-based upscaling, which is done primarily through FSR these days. Now, if we do a side-by-side of video games, I think the Switch 2 actually looks much sharper in comparison to the Series S thanks to DLSS. DLSS is hands down the best upscaler in the world. It is better than any other solution, and this is going to be a huge benefit to the Switch 2. Everything is just clearer on the Switch 2 despite running at a lower internal resolution thanks to DLSS. Now, if we move over to Cyberpunk, I want you to pay attention to the fence. Specifically, anytime someone moves past the fence, if you look at the Series S, you can see that there's a lot of visual breakup as a result of the upscaling method that it's using that does not exist on the Switch 2. The Switch 2 just has a much cleaner overall image resolve. On the Series S, when there's a lot of fine detail and movement, you can see that there's a ton of artifacting and ghosting and just breakup there. The fact that they were able to get this running on the Switch 2 so easily, and the fact that it's running so stably, I mean, it's almost a rock-solid 30 frames per second, although there are some minor frame pacing and delivery issues, but I expect those to be patched out. It's already light years beyond the previous generation console versions. And this is capable in part due to the fact that the Switch 2 now has active cooling in the dock. which helps prevent it from thermal throttling while in docked mode. Now, in handheld mode, there's also a ton of upgrades, the first one being the size of the screen. It is significantly larger at 7.9 inches without sacrificing the thinness of the unit. It's also a higher resolution screen. It's now running at 1080p instead of 720p in handheld mode, which is a huge bump up. In addition to that, it now supports higher frame rates. The Switch 2 supports up to 120 frames per second, so the on-screen movement when you're playing in handheld mode will be significantly smoother. It also now supports HDR, so the color reproduction on the Switch 2 will be significantly better than on the original Switch. So just to, again, recap everything here, the Switch 2 has a higher resolution screen, it supports HDR, it supports double the frame rate, and it also has VRR support, as well as having a bigger screen. Now, what is VRR, you might be asking? Well, it's a technology that dynamically adjusts the refresh rate of a display to match the frame rate of the source material, in this case, a video game. Traditionally, whenever there's a mismatch between the frame rate that is being delivered by the game and the frame rate on the panel that you're playing the game on, it can result in tearing, but you're never going to see any screen tearing when playing in portable mode on the Switch, thanks to VRR. And in addition to that, and I think this is the most important thing here, is that variable refresh rate will allow the system to operate at frame rates beyond just 30 or 60, which we've seen traditionally in previous generation consoles. Because it's a VRR display, it'll support everything, including 40 frames per second, because it's easily divisible by 120, so it will evenly deliver a 40 FPS experience, and it will be buttery smooth when you're playing in handheld mode. Unfortunately, you're not going to get this benefit when playing in docked mode. Speaking of cartridges, the Switch 2 cartridges are now red to differentiate between what's enhanced and what isn't. Your old Switch 1 games will work on the Switch, but if it's not a red cartridge, it's not made to take advantage of the Switch hardware. In addition to that, the Switch now uses microSD Express cards. It will not work with regular microSD cards. It has to say Express on it. If you go to Amazon, this is the only one I could find. It's SanDisk, and they have a 128 gig version and a 256 gigabyte version for $72. I wouldn't recommend either of those. I would get this Samsung one. It's cheaper, and it is available at Best Buy for $59.99. Another thing I'd recommend is a nice case. I bought this TomTalk case. I've used them in the past, and I love them. It's cheaper than the official option and works really well. It is form-fitting, so it won't hold your charger, but it'll hold some games and the console and take care of it very well. Now, another hardware change is that the Switch now supports mouse mode, so you can use your Joy-Cons as a mouse. It's a great option to have. Now, it's not new. Nintendo didn't create this. Both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series line of consoles also support mouse inputs. So I guess I'm uniquely positioned to take advantage of this because I already play in my living room using a mouse and keyboard sometimes. I bought this really cheap, like, plastic lap desk. You can throw it in a corner when you're not using it and just take it out when you want to use a mouse. And it works well. This is footage of me playing Jurassic World Evolution 2 using a mouse and keyboard on my Xbox Series X. And it works really well, so I can tell you from firsthand experience that this is going to be an awesome addition to the Nintendo Switch 2. Their implementation of it is super seamless based on everything we've seen. You can go from using it as a regular controller to a mouse without having to go into the menus and change anything. It just works seamlessly. And although Metroid isn't out yet, there have been a lot of hands-on demos of this game using the mouse and keyboard, and by all accounts, it works really, really well. And I can't wait to use this for RTS games. Civilization is a game that is coming to the Switch 2 and has already been confirmed to use mouse and keyboard as an option for additional controls. And I can't wait. I hope this brings about a resurgence of the RTS genre. So what about the games? That is the most important part of any new video game console, after all. Well, you might be surprised to learn that Nintendo only has one new first-party release for the Switch 2, and that is Mario Kart World. This is the only new first-party Nintendo game that is ready for launch, and this is the one that I picked up as a result, and it's, by all accounts, great. I haven't put in enough time to give a full review, but that'll be something that's coming later down the road. And a lot of people love Mario Kart. I think it's Nintendo's best-selling game franchise, so it's good to have this at launch. It's definitely a heavy hitter for sure. Now, Donkey Kong Bonanza is probably a game you've seen a lot of, and I was under the impression that this was going to be available for launch day, and I was planning to pick it up, but it's not. It doesn't come out until July the 17th, so we've got a little over a month to wait for this one to come out. So the jury is still out as to whether or not this will be good. This one is priced at a little bit of a discount. Instead of $80, it's $70, so that would seem to imply that it's probably a little bit of a shorter experience. Another game that falls under this category is Metroid Prime 4, another game that's been shown pretty extensively at this point, but it is not a launch game. It's not coming out on launch day. We don't even have a firm release date, as far as I know. They've just said that it's coming out towards the end of 2025, so this will probably be a holiday release. Nintendo also released something called the Nintendo Welcome Tour. This is not a game. It is a tour of the ins and outs of the console, and they're charging $10 for some reason, which I think is insane. Like, I'm not buying this. I'm not going to support it. Because I don't think they should be charging anything for it. You just walk around, it gets you acclimated to how the rumble works, how the magnets work, and you get like a stamp every time you view a tutorial on that. It's just weird. That's not to say that the system doesn't have any third-party support. Games like Street Fighter VI, Cyberpunk 2077, Split Fiction, Hogwarts Legacy are all notable third-party games that are all excellent. The problem, though, is that most of these games are several years old at this point, and you can find them on other consoles like the PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series line of consoles for much less. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to buy these specific third-party releases for the Switch. I mean, if you have an Xbox, you can pick up Hogwarts Legacy for $23 right now. If you have a PlayStation 5, you can pick it up for $40. These games have been out for a little while, so they're discounted. Are you really going to spend like $70 or $80 to buy the Switch 2 version of these games when you can buy them for like half the price on another platform? And a lot of the times, because these games have been out for a long time, they've been heavily patched. So not only is it more complete, it's also cheaper, and it also looks better. So you're buying a worse version and paying a lot more money for it. Now, games like Kirby the Forgotten Land, Tears of the Kingdom, and Mario Party Jamboree are excellent, but these are Switch 1 games. They're not Switch 2 games. And Nintendo is charging a whopping $80 for some of these games, despite having been released for $60 on the original Nintendo Switch years ago for some of these titles. It just doesn't make a ton of sense. Now, there is a little bit of additional content, but still. Now, Mario Kart World is the game that I picked up with my launch Switch, and I picked it up because I love Mario Kart. It's an excellent franchise. I've played all of them. I love it to death. Now, this game has been heavily advertised as being an open world game. It's not really an open world game. This is the map for Mario Kart World, and each one of those icons that you see is a track to race on, and all of those roads that you see are different ways to get to the next track. But that's really all it is. It's just something to do in between races to keep you entertained. It's not really a true open world per se. But it is kind of cool because, like, once you complete a race, for example, here's a race that was just completed, and now we're traveling to the next race. And while you're traveling to the next race, you can see oftentimes the other track in the distance. So it gives it the illusion of an open world. Like, for example, here you can see the DK track is coming up, and you're racing towards that. But there's really not much to do in between tracks. The car selection has been simplified. Instead of picking like different tires and a different chassis and different wings, it's all just one complete vehicle, which I think is great. Now, I haven't played enough of this game to give a review. I just picked it up, and I've only played it for about an hour or so. But I can tell you that it's awesome. If you had any doubts as to whether or not this game is good, it is. Is it a system seller? Is it worth $80? That's a discussion for another time. I haven't put enough time into the game yet to really say one way or the other, but I'm not happy with the increase in prices, universal increase in prices on Nintendo's end. It's a little bit frustrating. Now, there are a handful of smaller titles that are going to be available for a bit of a discount on launch. Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD Remaster is one of those. This is an old-school turn-based RPG. It's got a beautiful art style, although it's a bit outdated at this point. If you can't already tell, this is a remaster of a very, very old game. I think the original Bravely Default released on the 3DS all the way back in 2012. So this is a remaster of this game. Having said that, it does run at 60 FPS in 4K. Native, I believe, so I'll pick it up just because I never beat it the first time. Another indie title to check out is Fast Fusion. This is a long-running racing game that has been exclusive to the Nintendo line of consoles. I think the first one originally released on the Wii U, and then that got a remaster on the original Switch's launch, and now this is a sequel to that game. So, you know, it looks like a lot of fun. It looks like it's going to have a lot of track variety, which is great. So this is one I definitely recommend picking up if you're looking for a technical showpiece that is relatively affordable. These games are always super cheap. This one is only $15 at launch. Now, you may have noticed that at the bottom of a lot of third-party titles, such as Hitman, World of Assassination, Hogwarts Legacy, and Street Fighter VI, there's a mention of something called a game keycard. And that's because the cost of producing games on these cartridges are very expensive, to the point where Nintendo gave third parties a cheaper alternative in the form of game keycards. So instead of buying a full-price 64-gig Switch 2 cartridges, developers can opt for a tiny game keycard cartridge. So the full game is not on the cartridge. It's just going to be a key that allows you to download the full copy of the game digitally. And as long as you have that key in the Switch, the game will work, and these are resellable. Now, Nintendo has promised that none of their first-party games are going to act this way. The full game is going to be on every Nintendo first-party cartridge. That's what they're telling us, at least. So one final thing I wanted to touch on when it comes to software is that there are a handful of titles that are going to get free updates. What you're seeing on screen is all of the games that are going to receive free updates on launch day. So you can download these if you already own the games and get boosted resolutions and faster performance on many of these. All right, so what are my closing thoughts here? What do I think about it? Do I regret buying it? Do I think that you should go out and run and buy one on day one? Well, it depends. If you're someone who only plays Nintendo games and you're going from a Switch 1 as your primary gaming console to a Switch 2, then it's absolutely worth it. You'll see a huge difference. Or if you're somebody who just loves Nintendo games, maybe Nintendo's your favorite software developer and you just can't not play the new Nintendo release, then yeah, you have to get this because it's the only way to play these games. This is the camp that I fall into. But if you already have a PlayStation 5 or Xbox series of consoles and your primary interest is in third-party games like Grand Theft Auto 6, it might not be the console for you. But for me, if I were to give it a grade today, it would be an 8.5 out of 10. I think it has so much potential, and I don't regret buying it. I'm having a ton of fun with Mario Kart, and I can't wait to see what comes next. As always, thank you for watching, and let me know in the comments below if you plan to pick one up.